Good morning. How are you all today? Good, good, good. I'm pretty good myself. Pretty good. Pretty good. Been working on this talk here. As usual, they keep changing. But I came up with something, so I guess I'll share it with you today. My talk title is called Order in the High Watch. The High Watch is the theme of our World Day of Prayer, which we just had this past week on Wednesday and Thursday. Our World Day of Prayer was centered about the High Watch. And the High Watch is something that we've kind of needed to hold, actually, for the past few years. But again, we had another active week. Seems like every time I get up here, I go, well, that week happened. Well, this week happened as well. Not only did we have our World Day of Prayer on Thursday, which was, we had people showing up from 10 to 3 holding prayer in our prayer room, and we had a video from Unity Village about with the daily word reading and about the unity prayer, how we pray in unity, affirmative prayer, which was all very, very cool. That day also, we found out that Queen Elizabeth had passed away. And today is the first anniversary of the Twin Towers disaster. So there's a lot going on. I know for me, the passing of the Queen, you'd think that, well, we're Americans. You know, she's not, so, you know, why would it bother you? Well, it does. It does. She took the throne, so to speak, the year I was born. So in 70 years, I have known 14 presidents. Well, I've known 13. I think Woodrow Wilson was president when I was born. I found that out just the other day when I was looking it up. But there have been 14 presidents and one queen. One queen. She was described as steadfast and always present as the queen to her people and to the world. She gave us a sense of order. There's the queen, as gracious as she was, and she was very, to say human. Although she lived a totally different life than everybody else, as does most people in those echelons that she lived in. But she was gracious. She was kind. She was humorous too. There was a story today in the paper about she was out walking with one of her bodyguards out by one of her places in Scotland, I think, and she came across a hiker came across her, and she was dressed in civilian clothes, and the hiker did not recognize her. So they were having a conversation, and the hiker asked her, "Have you ever met the Queen?" She said, "Well, no, personally, I have not, but he has." And so she talked to her bodyguard and was asking about her and said, "Well, she can be fairly grumpy at times." And then when the hiker wanted a picture with her bodyguard, the Queen took the picture. She was very personable and down to earth. So her passing does affect us in many different ways, at many different levels. And it takes away a little bit of a sense of order in our lives. We had that, as well as the cacophony of ongoing political ruckus in world affairs. And in this week, as in every week, every single one of us has the ups and downs of our life experience to go through. And at times, the ups and downs of our life experience makes all the other stuff in the world pale to comparison. In our World Day of Prayer, holding the high watch, a lot of discussion was put forward as to what that means. For me, it speaks to what we as truth students aspire to every day. We aspire to holding the high watch. The term holding the high watch is usually thought of in the context of prayer, of knowing the truth is here and is working itself into expression. That's generally what we think of when we think of holding the high watch. And as in the opening line of our guiding prayer from last week, which goes, with an inward, upward gaze, I rise from human concerns so that I may revel in the indwelling Spirit. For me, holding the high watch can also be a frame of mind for which we can aspire. We can aspire in times when we are living our lives, because there are times when we live our lives just day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, and sometimes second to second. Holding the high watch can be acknowledging the presence of God in the midst of our human experience, in the midst of our human concerns, because in the challenging or confusing times, that is where our safe place is. Spirit is always your safe place. I say that because when order appears to have left the building, God has not. Spirit has not. God is always there, just as it ever was, just as it always will be, as a refuge of order and of peace. Divine order shows up in countless ways in our lives, mostly in small ways, just like the everyday miracles that I spoke about the past couple weeks. We experience divine order as everyday things in our lives. We usually aren't aware of it until something in that order that we have become accustomed to changes. It could be a little thing, but even some little thing, bing, we notice it, because that little thing is a part of our life. And when it changes, we're kind of thrown off kilter a little bit because we have to readjust. Now, 21 years ago, we had a big change. The World Trade Center disaster was 21 years ago today. Yeah, I find it hard to believe. I know I knew what I was doing. I was working at, I can't remember the name of the hotel. It was a big one in Sarasota. I was out there working as a plumber, and we were sitting out on a unfinished balcony, the Ritz-Carlton. I was working on the Ritz-Carlton. We were up on about the 12th, 13th floor, way up, sitting on a balcony, having our break. And we saw all of these black limousines coming over coming from the beach, across the main streets in Sarasota, big, long, many, many, many black limousines. We said, something's up, because that's the president. Because he was there doing something. Yeah, I think he was visiting a school. And we saw, actually, he was not in that convoy. He was at the school. But that was everybody that was with him was going to pick him up and get out of town. We knew something was up, but we didn't know what until later. Just a few minutes later, the news started coming in. And of course, all work stopped, which completely confused our supervisors. They just, why aren't you working? Because we're listening to the news. Well, you can't do that. You have to work. Watch us. We were union. But anyway, that was the beginning of a giant change. A change for our country, a change for the world. It threw the world, and especially our country, into chaos. The order of things had been broken. Not just upset, but broken. And it had to be restored as soon as possible without knowing how to do it. Because nothing like this had ever happened before. And when finally order was restored, when planes started flying again, if you remember the red, orange, green warnings and all that stuff we had, we're still taking off our belts and our shoes and standing in lines and all of this stuff. From that point forward, everything changed. And that's because we lost an amount of trust in our fellow human beings. That's sad, but it's true. It all changed because we lost just that amount of trust in our fellow human beings. So now 20 years later, air travel and life in general is different than it was in the past. The good news is, even as we have had to adjust our trust in fellow human beings, there is no need to adjust our trust in spirit. Spirit has not changed a bit. With an upward and inward gaze, I rise from human concerns so that I may revel in the indwelling Spirit. It is here in the indwelling Spirit that we know that, yes, God is truly in the midst of it all. In the midst of it all, bringing about divine order from human disorder. And that pretty much keeps God busy in this planet. As Ralph Waldo Emerson describes it, it brings you to the place in the middle of the stream of power and wisdom, which animates all whom it floats. And you are without effort compelled to truth, to right, and perfect contentment. Without effort, compelled to truth, to right, and to perfect contentment. That is the movement back to divine order that we find as we move our trust to Spirit. That is God being God in the midst of it all. That is divine order at work in your life. Our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, in his book, Jesus Christ Heals, says, if you are disorderly and indefinite along any line, put yourself at once under the order of divine mind by affirming daily that the same law that swings the stars and in the cushions of the ethers is operative in and through your life and all of your affairs. The same law that swings the stars. And we've seen the stars new with the new telescope out there. We see all these pictures of these galaxies and all that. And I wonder, I know many people wonder, how many more lives are going on out in these galaxies. The same God that's out there in those galaxies are right here, right now, in this room, in each and every one of you, within every single person you know. Spirit is there, always has been, always will be. We all desire to have that semblance of order, to know that divine order is active in my life. Darn it. And when it's been disrupted, when we're in that darn it stage, it can be a difficult thing to reestablish because we can get focused on the difference. We can be focused on what's been taken away, excuse me, on what we don't have anymore, about what isn't in our repertoire of daily stuff. Well, if we stop for a moment, if we desire to live in some semblance of order, you can stop, find God, and move from there. I have a story about that. Well, I've made it about that. It's a story about myself back in the day, back when I used to hunt, which generally entailed of going out with my friends with our shotguns and wandering about the woods and looking at all the cool stuff and harassing a few squirrels. We never shot anything. Well, we were outside of Wildwood, just outside of Wildwood, Florida, and this was close to 40 years ago. Yeah, definitely over 40 years ago. Anyway, it was nothing like it is now. You had Wildwood was just an exit and an orange stand. That was it. That was all. You had to go a while till you hit it had a blinker. It didn't even have a stoplight. There was nothing out there. No big intersections, no stores, no nothing. So we went out there, decided to go out there hunting, and we dropped people off along the trail, and I got dropped off. Okay, you wait here and see if something comes through. Of course, nothing came through, but it was really neat to watch be in the woods. So I figured, well, it's been a while. I wonder when they're going to come back through. Well, unbeknownst to me, they came back through a different way, and I was supposed to know my way back to the car, but I didn't. I had not been out in the woods as much as they had in that particular one. So I found myself lost in the woods, out in Wildwood. And that's an interesting thing, to be actually lost in the woods. You look up in the tree canopy, you can't see the light. You can't see the sun. The sun filters through, but you can't see the sun, and there's no sense of direction. There's animal trails leading all over the place. So I started walking, and I stopped. I said, I don't know where I'm going. And I could stay and wait, but it could be hours and hours before they found me, and I don't feel like waiting hours and hours, so I stopped. And I became still. And I listened. I listened for some sort of direction. I was trying to be aware of some sort of direction. I heard the interstate. I heard 75. Every so often you'd hear a truck going by. So off I went in the direction of the sound of the interstate. It was an amazing trek through the woods. There was a tree lying across a creek. It was this wide. It was 4 or 5 feet wide. It was huge, this tree trunk. So, oh, cool, I'll walk across it. Fell right through it. Got a few steps and went right through it. And it was amazing because it had lain there for how many hundreds of years for a tree 4 foot in diameter to become that rotten. And I was the one who fell through it. Every so often, I'd have to stop and redirect myself, listen for the sound, and go to where the sound was loudest, because you could hear it all around, but you had to redirect myself to where it was the loudest. Excuse me. And I finally came out. I finally came out next to the interstate, climbed a fence, and I knew where I was. So I walked back to the orange juice stand with my shotgun over my shoulder. I had a double barrel. It was broken over my shoulder. Broken means opened up. I had it over my shoulder. I walked along the interstate, which I'm guessing you could not do today. And just as I was putting the dime in to call my friends, they showed up. Where the heck have you been? In the woods. Why'd you leave me there? Oh, we got back to the trailer and you seen David? No. Did he come with you? No. I thought he came with you. No, didn't come with me. Oh boy. So they came and got me and all was well. That, my friends, is a way back to order. When life seems to be too much, you seem to be lost, or everything is just out of whack. Stop. Be still. Listen for Spirit. Be still and tune into your inner guidance. Tune into what is familiar to you, to what you know and how you know Spirit to be. Tune into that. That God presence that is the core of you. Follow that. Follow that. If you come to a point where you're not really sure, stop busting in that direction. Stop. Be still again. And realign yourself. Where is Spirit the most evident? In my thoughts, in my ideas, in my life. And follow that. You may have to stop every so often, but if you do, you will eventually find yourself back out into the light of a familiar world with a new order that works for you. In John 15:5, Jesus the Christ says, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he it is, or she, of course, that bears much fruit. In this case, the fruit is your answers to a new life order, a new life experience. So friends, in times of disorder, stop. Stop and listen for Spirit to set your new direction and allow it to help you. Rise from human concerns so that you might revel in the indwelling of Spirit and allow it to compel you to float without effort to truth, to right, a perfect contentment, and a perfect order for you. God blesses you.